We will now begin by welcoming everyone to this morning's hearing on sanctuary cities, a threat to public safety. And I will recognize myself for an opening statement. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today, and I want to express, Mr. Steinle, to you my profound sympathy to you and to Kate's mother, and to her brother and all of your family, and those who cherished her for the tragic loss of your beautiful daughter. The preeminent function of government is to provide for the safety and security of the law-abiding public. It is among the chief reasons we consent to be governed and bound by a collection of laws. We want those that we love to be protected, so we abide by the law in hopes that others will feel similarly bound. What makes this nation different is our respect for and adherence to the law, because the law is the greatest unifying force in our culture, and it is the greatest equalizing force in our culture. In fact, we think so highly of the law that we make aspiring citizens take an oath that contains 6 separate references to the law. This system of laws failed Kate Steinle as it has failed others like her. And this is more than an academic discussion about prosecutorial discretion. It is more than political pandering to certain voting constituencies. It is more than the supremacy clause or the commandeering clause. It is quite literally life and death. And this is the real world where everyone isn't a dreamer and everyone isn't a valedictorian. There are criminals motivated by malice and a conscious disregard for the lives of others, and there are cities more interested in providing a sanctuary for those criminals than they are providing a sanctuary for their own law-abiding citizens. I've been on this committee, Mr. Chairman, for almost 5 years now, and I have listened closely to the debate over immigration. You don't hear many witnesses called by our colleagues on the other side to talk about law enforcement or background checks or enforcement mechanisms. You do hear certain phrases repeated with catatonic frequency, as if rote repetition will somehow make it true. You hear phrases like functional control over the border, uttered by witnesses who are uniquely well-positioned to know better. You hear citizenship for 11 million undocumented aspiring Americans, as if 11 million of any category could pass a background check. You hear arguments against empowering state and local law enforcement to assist federal authorities, and those are the most illogical arguments of all. We trust state and local law enforcement to investigate all manner of crime, from murder to sex assault to kidnapping to narcotics trafficking, but God forbid they help us enforce immigration laws. State and local law enforcement are good enough to provide protection for members of Congress in this city and when they are back home. But somehow, some way, all that changes when it comes to the issue of immigration. They are no longer smart enough to enforce federal immigration law. And even though some do not trust state and local law enforcement to enforce federal law, they are more than happy to allow state and local officials to openly ignore that same federal immigration law. Which brings us to that benign-sounding phrase, sanctuary cities. The definition of sanctuary is a place of refuge or safety. It almost sounds utopian. A place of refuge, a place of safety. Refuge for whom? Safety for whom? For a young woman walking on a pier with her father? Or for a career recidivist like Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, who had a quarter century's worth of lawlessness dating all the way back to 1991. He committed local, state, and federal crimes in at least 5 separate states. He was deported 5 times, and each time had so little regard for the law that he re-entered that border that we are supposed to have functional control over. His procedural history is every bit as disturbing. In May of 2011, this defendant was convicted and sentenced to 46 months imprisonment for illegal re-entry again. At the conclusion of that sentence, he was released from the Bureau of Prisons to a known sanctuary jurisdiction for the ostensible prosecution of an old drug case. And of course, San Francisco did not prosecute that old drug case. They dismissed it, which surprises exactly no one. And then they released this defendant. They did not return him to the Bureau of Prisons or to federal probation. They did not honor the detainer placed on him by ICE. They released someone they knew was not legally in this country and had a criminal history dating back to the early 1990s. And we are given a litany of excuses for policies like this. We are told that we need policies like the one in San Francisco so people will cooperate with law enforcement. And I want you to consider how utterly illogical that is. We are releasing known criminals back into society so society will help us catch known criminals. Then, of course, some of our friends on the other side say all of this is necessary so folks will, to use the president's word, come forward or get on the books or get right with the law. I want you to ask yourself, what in this defendant's background leads you to believe that he would ever come forward or get on the books or get right with the law? He was already on the books. Better than that, he was in jail. And he was there because he had not complied with a single damn thing we had asked him to do. So are we supposed to catch him again after San Francisco releases him? Do we wait on another victim? Is that the strategy behind sanctuary cities? Release them and then wait until they victimize someone else? Is that what we mean by coming forward? The president and others constantly talk about comprehensive immigration reform, but they are very light on the details when it comes to enforcement and background checks. They just fundamentally fail to understand that border security, both borders, by the way, both of them, and internal security are fundamental conditions precedent to fixing our broken immigration system. Mr. Steinle, about a year ago, there was a precious little girl waiting on the steps of the Capitol for me after votes, and I knew what was coming, so I could not walk past her. I knew or suspected that she would repeat those phrases that so-called advocates teach children to repeat to members of Congress. But I had to stop, as any father of a daughter would, and I stopped and the little girl said, "I want to pray for you." None of the stuff that the advocates tell the children to say. She just said, "I want to pray for you." So I picked her up, and in a mixture of Spanish and English, she told God that she was not here legally, but she wanted to stay. And everyone that I know would want to help that little girl. But everyone also should have wanted to help your little girl, Mr. Steinle. She wasn't 5. But she's still your daughter, and this country should have protected her. And I hope you're given answers. I hope the politicians in San Francisco will explain to you why they thought it was more important to provide a sanctuary to Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez than they did to provide a sanctuary for your daughter. And I hope this administration will tell you why a Bureau of Prisons released a 5-time illegal entrant to a known sanctuary city for a piddling damn drug charge that wound up being dismissed. And I hope San Francisco will tell you why they released a convicted felon rather than honor the detainer in place or just simply return him to ICE. You deserve those answers, and you deserve to know that your daughter's sacrifice had meaning and purpose, and that her death will serve to save the lives of other people. When Trayvon Martin was shot, and even before our criminal justice system had acted, the president said that could have been his son. For those of us that have daughters, which includes the president, your daughter could have been our daughter. I used to have a quote on the wall of my old office at the courthouse. It was given to me by a victim advocate. It was from a Greek philosopher named Solon. I'll paraphrase it, but this is pretty close. He was asked what city was the best one to live in, and he answered, "That city where those who are not injured by crime take up the cause of those who are as if it had been them." That's the kind of country we should want, too. One where we do not have to lose our daughters to feel the pain that you feel. And we shouldn't have to lose daughters to know that no one else should have to feel like you feel this morning. With that, I would recognize the ranking member.
First of all, I'd like to thank the members of this committee for the honor to speak to you about our daughter, Kate. All children are special in their own way. Kate was special in the way she connected with people. We call it the Kate effect. Kate was beautiful, she was kind, she was loving, and deep in faith. Kate had a special soul, a kind heart, the most contagious laugh, and a smile that would light up a room. Kate loved to travel, spend time with her friends, and most of all, spend time with her family. In fact, the day she was killed, we were walking arm in arm on Pier 14 in San Francisco, enjoying a wonderful day together. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Kate fell, looked at me and said, "Help me, Dad." Those are the last words I will ever hear from my daughter. The day Kate died, she changed her Facebook cover photo to a saying that said, "Whatever good for your soul, do that." This quote truly describes her spirit. After graduating from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, she went to work for a title company and saved her money so she could travel the world. She traveled to Spain, Thailand, Amsterdam, Dubai, South Africa, just to name a few. She even made her way to the slums of Mumbai, India, to reach out to her friend's mother's nanny. She spent time there with the woman's family and came home a changed person. Everywhere Kate went throughout the world, she shined the light of a good citizen of the United States of America. Unfortunately, due to disjointed laws and basic incompetence on many levels, the U.S. has suffered a self-inflicted wound in the murder of our daughter by the hand of a person that it should never have been on the streets of this country. I say this because the alleged murderer is an undocumented immigrant who has been convicted of 7 felonies in the U.S. and already deported 5 times. Yet in March of this year, he was released from jail to stay here freely because of legal loopholes. It's unbelievable to see so many innocent Americans have been killed by undocumented immigrant felons in recent years. In fact, we recently came across a statistic that says between 2010 and 2014, criminal aliens who had an active deportation case at the time of release were subsequently charged with homicide-related offenses. Think about that. 121 times over 4 years, an illegal immigrant, a violent illegal immigrant, with prior criminal convictions that later went on to be charged with murder when they should have been deported. That's 1 every 12 days. Our family realizes the complexities of immigration laws. However, we feel strongly that some legislation should be discussed, enacted, or changed to take these undocumented immigrant felons off our streets for good. We would be proud to see Kate's name associated with some of this new legislation. We feel that if Kate's law saves 1 daughter, 1 son, a father or a mother, Kate's death won't be in vain.